Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the second episode in the Deload Series. You need to go back and look at episode 1. It's important because it sets up the whole purpose to this second episode, which is going to be about the nutrition of the deload and why I make certain nutritional changes in this deload that are different to my primary phase that I may be in. When we talked about in the first segment about training that the training that you probably are doing is higher in oxidative stress and a stimulus called a muscle lactic stimulus. And to clarify, the muscle lactic stimulus is essentially the old-fashioned way of training where you work a muscle group all the way through and stay on that muscle group, right? So it's like, well, let's take chest for example. I set up and I do some form of a press, and then I do another press, and then I do a fly, and then I may finish with some kind of a finisher. That's my chest workout, and then I move on to another muscle group. Probably a lot of you guys are doing that. And even if you guys are doing supersets of different body parts, you're probably only doing 1 to 2 body parts in that actual session. The deload, as I explained in the previous video, that I typically like to do is a much higher frequency, lower volume training, which means that I'm getting several more body parts than just 2. Oftentimes it's anywhere from 3 to 5, depending on the size of the tissue. And when I program out that deload, what I'm trying to do is stimulate about the same amount of surface area of tissue as possible, if that makes sense. So I want every day to have an equal amount of output. That's the whole purpose. Now, when I switch over to the deload, okay, I usually go to more of a total lactic stimulus, which means that I'm stimulating more than one tissue at once. And what the whole purpose behind that, without going too deep into the science of it, because nutrition it's not my main niche, but I know just enough to be able to apply it effectively into myself and into my clients, is that when you do your regular training and you do this muscle lactic stimulus, you need to have a little bit more, ideally, okay, let's just say in a perfect world, a little bit more of a glycolytic style of diet, okay, more of a diet that's fuller in glucose. That means carbohydrates. So I'm putting more carbohydrates around my training time. I'm putting more carbohydrates through my day. And the reason why is when you do a muscle lactic stimulus, you're draining muscle glycogen. You're using that glycogen that's stored in that muscle tissue for energy, and then your rest of your nutrition is to replenish that, right? When you go into the total lactic stimulus, there's a couple great things that can happen. Number one, you can go into an AMPK environment, which is an anti-aging environment, which is opposite of the mTOR environment that basically you are in your hypertrophy training. So that is great for general health and well-being. Okay, the biggest goal of the deload is I'm trying to get rid of inflammation. So by being AMPK, that's a great environment to be in to get rid of all kinds of inflammation that comes from toxins or free radicals, so on and so forth, even from under recovering in a sense. Because oxidative stress is a tough thing that happens with being an mTOR at all and even too long. And so the idea of being these two different pathways of mTOR and AMPK are very important. I think they're significantly undervalued. The total lactic stimulus, ideally what that does by stimulating more than one tissue in a session with low volume, it allows me to pull calories down in general. And it also really allows me to pull carbohydrates down to what most would seem to be dangerously low. And by dangerously low, I mean very aggressive, like even as low as 0 sometimes. And it's like, well, why would you do that if you're not in a prep? Well, because carbohydrates is the one macronutrient, your starches and your sugars are your one macronutrient that hold on and can contribute to inflammation. And that is because if you have any form of insulin resistance going on, you have any issues with regulating your blood sugar, you're going to have some significant internal inflammation going on. Anytime that you seem to have a plateau in your training, one of the reasons could be on a biological level that your inflammatory markers are just too high too frequently, and it's time to deload. So I always take that deload as a great opportunity to push the diet into a safe zone, get rid of macronutrients that could be non-conducive to getting rid of inflammation or could be holding on to inflammation, and starting to get in actual foods that help get rid of inflammation too. So the things that really go up nutritionally for me is protein goes to a moderate level. So if I had to give a guesstimation for me, It's like 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. That is not set in stone. That's just something that works for me, especially as of recent. My fat will go to a moderate level. I've never been a huge person for high fats myself, but they will be the highest in this phase simply because I want my saturated fats to be a little higher, for the biggest reason that I want to feel satisfied when I eat my meals. And the reason why is because my carbohydrates will literally be at nil. So when my carbohydrates go low, my greens go very, very high. And I don't mean my green supplements. So my green supplements will be sprinkled in through the day. I'll talk about that in part number 3, where I talk about the supplementation. But I'm talking about, foliage and leafy greens, and things that have good soluble and insoluble fiber, especially greens and vegetables that are in season at that point in time. So I will literally have anywhere from 12 to 14 servings of vegetables, and the servings that I measure are either by the cup or in like 100-gram remedies. Okay, so you're talking about me having anywhere from 3 cups to 300 grams of veggies with every single meal. The other thing that I do nutritionally is I try to give my digestive system a break. So when you're doing your normal training, you're trying to fuel a fire, right? Like being on a meal plan is just as important as the training. So the frequency of your meals is probably pretty high. I mean, you guys are probably between anywhere from 5 to 7 meals a day for you extremists. So when I'm in a hypertrophy phase, a neurological phase, or whatever it may be, my main working phase, I'm usually around between 5 and 6 meals. And I'm trying to stay relatively like on a time schedule and robotic with that, just because it's easier for me mentally. No particular reason other than that. When I actually go into a deload, I'll do 2 things. I'll back off the amount of meals that I have in a day. They'll go down to 3 or 4, and they'll be bigger meals, right? So my protein measurement per meal will be higher. My fat measurement per meal will be higher. And in addition, I'll include a lot of intermittent fasting. So I will do both feeding windows and fasting windows. I will feed for about 8 hours, and the rest of the time will literally be fasted. And depending on how regular my digestion feels, how good I'm recovering, how quickly I'm dropping, maybe water retention, bloat, inflammation, how my joints feel, will be very dependent on how long I continue to fast. Because in my opinion, like, you are not what you ingest. The calorie number doesn't mean anything. All it is a measure of consistency for you to make mindful adjustments. So the calorie doesn't mean you're using 3,000 calories or whatever XYZ may be, because you are exactly what you are able to absorb. And if your digestive system is completely stressed, you can guarantee that the rest of your hormones are going to be not far behind or already there, which is where the inflammatory markers come from. Oftentimes, with my experience with myself and other people I work with, they have body fat issues, they have thyroid issues, they have insulin issues, they have leptin resistance, they have elevated cortisol, growth hormone response issues. All these hormonal markers are off because they're not taking care of their digestion. So that's a major deal with the deload. So let's recap real quick. The deload, the whole purpose is to get into a total lactic environment. With a total lactic environment, the purpose is not draining any glycogen from muscle tissue. And since I'm not draining any muscle glycogen, and I'm using only liver glycogen for energy, I'm able to pull my carbohydrates down low and still perform really, really well. It's important for you guys to remember that in video 1, I said that the training frequency and that had to be very high per muscle group, and the training volume had to be low. If you abuse that, okay, the deload will not work with the nutrition demands that you change into the ones that I'm speaking of. Okay, a couple other things I do is I really increase my vegetable intake, especially in season vegetables. Okay, because I'm trying to get more fiber in. I'm trying to get more micronutrients in general. People really underestimate the value of fiber as an exceptional vehicle and carrier of toxins and xenoestrogens in general. So that is an exceptional usage for you guys to start forcing down your veggies. If you want to stay lean, you have to be able to clear estrogen and toxins. So get your veggies up, okay? The other thing that I will do is start to incorporate intermittent fasting, and I will also have a feeding window. Okay, so the diet it's not rocket science, but this 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, it equals 10 every time, and it pays dividends in the end. So stay tuned. I will be giving you episode 3 about nutrition, or excuse me, episode 3 about supplementation. This one was about nutrition. If you have questions, feel free to comment below. Make sure you guys are all following me on my social media. I'm most active on my Instagram. It is my name, and I post on there every day. Reach out to me with any kind of questions, concerns that you have, and I will talk to you in the next episode about supplements.